Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to cover how to purchase a used vehicle and the things you need to look for to make sure that you're buying the best possible vehicle you can get yourself. You don't want to fall into any junkers or something that's been in an accident, frame damage, things like that. So we're going to go ahead and start from the outside, work our way in, take a look at the engine, look in the trunk, and I'll show you some things to look for, keep an eye out. That could be expensive repairs, things like that. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so starting from the outside, the first thing I like to do before I start getting into the finer details is I like to walk around the car, okay? And this way I'm looking for any body damage, anything that's visible just from walking around the car, okay? And you can see so far this car looks pretty straight. No real body damage or anything on the outside, just a couple scratches it looks like. And here's what I like to do next. So I'll start out at one end of the vehicle, doesn't matter the front or the back, and I usually like to take the car out into the sun, okay? And that way I can see all the reflections from panel to panel. This way I'm making sure that the orange peel, unless the car's been repainted or wet sanded and they took out the orange peel, but generally factory you'll see orange peel in the paint. And so what I like to do is just get it out here in the sun, get all the reflections coming along here. And first thing I notice right away is here is bumper. One of the little plastic things broke off on the inside, so it's sticking out a little bit there. That doesn't look like anything major. So I'm just going to follow these panels one down to the next, just looking to see that all these panels match in color and clarity. Okay, and I'll just follow that down, and then you just look at the reflection, right, and you see the difference from panel to panel. They're pretty much all the same. Okay, and then I'll do this around the entire car. I'll follow it around panel to panel, around the entire vehicle. But you want to catch that reflection, and you want to follow it. And doing it, same thing to the other side. Just following it on down. As you can see, everything looks to match. So, since that looks good to me, let's move on to the next thing. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'll take my finger, and I'm up here on the hood, and on one side I'm going to rub my finger across the crease, just making sure of the width and the height between these two panels, so everything's aligned there, nothing's popping up, nothing's closer than the other. And I'll run my hand across these creases on the other side of the hood to make sure that I'm getting that same width that I did on the other side. And then I like to start back here at the trunk and start doing the same thing. And the reason I like to start back here at the trunk and the hood to begin with, checking this, is because generally accidents will occur from the front or the rear. So that's why I check them first, okay? So everything's even and aligned. If something's out of a line, something like one part of the hood's higher, one part of the trunk's higher than the other, the car may have actually been in an accident. And another thing to check for too is the rear bumper here, because obviously if the trunk was affected, then definitely most likely the bumper would have been affected. So I like to look and really look closer at the quality and clarity of the paint as compared to the trunk lid. So that's one thing I like to do, as well as the front bumper. If there's an issue with the front hood. So that's another thing I like to do. I also like to use this technique around any different panels around the vehicle. This way I get an idea of how straight the body is exactly. Okay, and I'll go from passenger side to the driver's side. Doesn't matter which order you do it, but I'll check it like that. And that's generally what I'll do for the outside, at least for the paint and body. Now I kind of go into the more mechanical stuff. So let's get started on that. Okay, and the next thing I'll check is going to be obvious. It's going to be the tire tread. So there's tire wear marks on the inside, and you'll feel them. It's like a little bump on the inside. I don't know if I can get this, but you can see there's a little wear mark right there. If it will focus. Anyways, if the tires are down to that wear mark, you know you're going to need some tires soon, and you're going to want to check that all the tires are matching around the sides of the vehicle, because that could lead to alignment issues, things like that. Just throwing some cheap tires on. But anyways, yeah, the tires on this car are good. I checked it. They're not close to the wear mark or anything like that. And what I'll do after that is I'll take a look in here at the rotors, and you can see there's no real lip. Like, you just want to rub your finger across like this, because if you're feeling a big lip, so to speak, on the outside, or you push your finger this way to feel it on the inside, you're gonna know that it's gonna need rotors soon. This one doesn't really have any lip. If it's a small lip, it's just got a very minute sort of lip on there. So that's not gonna be an issue. And I like to look at the brakes. You'll need a flashlight to really get down in there to see how much tread you have. So it's always good to bring a flashlight to look. I know this car does need rear brakes. They're kind of getting down there. So that's what you want to look for also when you're looking at the wheel, the rotors and the brakes. You just want to look at the condition of the tire itself, to see how, if it's got any dents in it, any cracks in the rim itself. So I always do that as well. And you can see up here, brakes right back there. There's the brake pads right back there. So there's plenty of life left on those brakes. And you can see the rotors up here, not even a lip. These were replaced more recently than the rears. So let's go ahead and take a look on the inside. Okay, so I just hopped into the car, and the first thing you're gonna wanna do, obviously, is go ahead and start it up. Get some power to the car. Okay, so I just wanna look on the dash, see that all the gauges are working, the temperature gauge, gas gauge, miles per hour, your RPMs, obviously, you're revving just about right. Okay. And you can notice too that the pixels are not working on this side, and they're not working over here on that side. That can be kind of an expensive repair, because you got to pull out the whole dash to even get there. Pain in the butt. And what you're going to want to start doing from there is just checking all the electronics in the car, the heated seats, the headlight washers, the headrest release, that the power windows work. And this here is to disable the alarm system. So if you're going to have the vehicle towed, the alarm doesn't go off. If you're working on it and there's movement in the car, the alarm system won't go off. Obviously, you check all your heated seats, check your stereo, check all the radio stations, make sure it works. Definitely turn your AC all the way up to max. Run it for, I would say, 5 minutes. That way you'll get an idea if the car's actually, AC is actually getting cold, or if it's not getting cold at all. Best case scenario, if the air conditioning actually is not working, you might need a AC recharge, which is not that bad. Worst case scenario, you're talking about needing a new AC compressor, and that can get expensive very quick. So again, you'll want to just check the power seats on that side. You'll check all the windows. You want to put the windows up and down. Just make sure they go up and down. Worst case scenario, they're not going up or going down slowly. You got a bad window regulator, and that actually can get pretty expensive. You got a trunk release here. Just check, make sure it works. Releases the trunk. Check the power windows, make sure those are working. Make sure both windows adjust and all that stuff. If not, it could be a fuse or something going on there, some electrical issue. You got your sport and winter modes here. Just check those. You got a rear sunscreen here. Just make sure that works. And you'll just go through, like I said, just check all the electronics. It's just pretty basic. I mean, just looking to see that all the electronic works. Cup rest, cup holder works. Try the lighter, make sure that works, if it's even got one with it. A lot of cars don't come with theirs. And then you just want to check the transmission here. So you're just kind of putting it back and forth from park to drive, and just go slowly from one to the next. You want to make sure this is actually not getting jolty, kind of really jerking into gears when you're shifting. That can be an expensive issue, or it could lead to an expensive issue if something is really jerking on your car when you're shifting the transmission like that. Another thing I like to do is that I like to start the car up, start it up, turn it off at least 4 or 5 times. And this is before I drive, even after I drive. And the reason is I'm checking for any issues with the starter. If there's any other issues, maybe with the crank position sensors, things like that, for some reason it's not starting, because with this specific Mercedes E430, they do have bad crank position sensors, and they get very expensive very quick. So I like to check that out. Make sure all the buttons on the key work, check the trunk, make sure it locks, make sure it opens. And so you just want to go through with all the electronics. Other than that, what you're just basically looking for is you're looking to see that that the interior condition looks good, because this is going to give you definitely good insight to how well this car has been maintained. And you can see this car is very clean on the inside and out. So I mean, that's just a kind of a, I guess, kind of an idea of how the car has been taken care of, and kind of will lead to really how many issues the car might have, just by the, you know, how nicely it looks and how well, if everything works, then you might have yourself a good car. But let's go ahead and let's take a look under the hood now. Okay, so I'm under the hood now, and I'm just looking at it to see how clean it is, looking to see if there's anything looks like it's wet down there, any oil or anything like that. But actually, before I get into that, the first thing I'm noticing here is that the hood stays up. So you got a shock here on this side, and you got another shock here on that side. If it's not staying up, it's the hood shocks are bad. That can kind of get expensive. I mean, a couple $100 for both of them. And you're gonna also want to check that on the trunk as well, to make sure that the springs are working and that the trunk's staying up, all that sort of thing. Got your air box. Well, let's go here. So this is the main thing. Since you see this big cover over here on the top of the engine, what I usually like to do, especially this car, some cars actually have little bolts holding this thing down and whatnot, so you can't really tell if there's really any leaks, because it's covering the whole, you know, bay of the engine. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and pop this up, pop it up in the front, pop it up in the back, and you can see it just pops up out of here, and then I'll be able to take a closer look underneath. So you can see, with getting that cover out of the way, you really can see if there's more going on down here. And you can see it's a little bit wet, damp around here. Looks like it's got a gasket leak here. So your valve cover is leaking on this one. The parts for the valve covers, the gaskets themselves are actually pretty cheap, but the work and labor, that's what makes it cost a lot of money. It can be a couple $100, so with the parts and labor and all that good stuff. So I'll do that myself, not have to worry about having somebody else do it for me. So anyways, just looking down here, and I always like to bring a flashlight. Don't have one right now at this moment. But you can see a little bit, everything looks pretty clean, just other than it looks like a small leak has been coming from here, the valve cover gasket. I checked the belts, you can see the belts look fine. Everything looks good. Recently replaced the oil, did the oil change on this. Another thing, it's very, very important to check, other than the oil. So you always want to check the oil, obviously. Check the airbox filter. Is the next thing that I like to check is this here. So take off this cap, look underneath. It's just a little dirty, but you'll want to get a flashlight and take a look on in there to see if there's any brown sludge, if there's any like white, like milky white stuff on the cover here, or if it's down in here, that means that you probably have a bad head gasket, and that's an instant, for me at least, that's an instant no on purchasing a vehicle unless they were giving it away for free. So a head gasket can cost you a couple $1,000s to have repaired, so that's a very serious thing to check. You want to check all your fluids here. You'll want to check your fluids here. Just going over all your fluids and looking at the hoses, like squeeze the hose. This hose isn't hard, it's very soft, so that's normal. But you're just looking through, making sure you got all your fluids filled up, all that good stuff. So what I also like to do at this point, I like to get under the car and take a look underneath to see if there's anything leaking. And I'll go around from front to back and I'll look under there, see if there's anything leaking around the wheels, if there's anything leaking under the transmission, under the engine oil pan, even in the back. So that's something you want to check for. Okay, so I'm just going to open the trunk up. And the trunk goes right up, stays up. You can see the springs are good. And just looking in, just seeing the condition of it in here. And yes, of course, I am selling this car. I actually replaced the light bulb, so I had this open. For some reason it doesn't want to stay, so I'm gonna have to get that to stick closed. You got your CD changer back here in the back. And this CD changer does not work. This is general of a Mercedes this year, so that happens. I got jumper cables just in case anything ever happens. And then I'll always check to see for the spare tire, and you can see it's got a brand new tire on it, and it's a Goodyear tire, so that's a good thing. Tires there, the wheels there. And also when I'm back here in the trunk, I'm just gonna go and look at this stuff here. I recently waxed this car, so there's a little bit of wax residue left on there. But you can see, doesn't feel bad. I just taken my fingers across, it seems very smooth. Doesn't seem like anything's gone on. If there's been any rear end accidents, usually you'll feel a little bump or a little change in the smoothness of the paint here on the side when you're rubbing your fingers down. So you want to check both sides of that. I always like to do that. All the rubber seals are in place, so it doesn't look like anybody's ever messed with them before. Usually if the car's been in an accident, they'll mess with the seals, pull the seals out, get some new ones on their trunk seals. So that's good. I washed the car. I can tell there's no water leaking in from the back seals. That can happen. Some cars that have been in rear end accidents, sometimes they'll leak water in, and that's one thing that I always check for. Sometimes I'll actually take a bottle of water and dump it on the trunk when it's closed like this, and I'll just dump some water in through here and see if it actually leaks down into the trunk. But that's what I'll do usually. So that's it for that part.